exciting. Exactly. Yeah. The internet. I will call to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move right along. Item number 3 is our consent agenda, which includes our meeting minutes from last month, January 13th. And our abstract of claims for this month. General fund totals $253,603.01. Water fund totals $26,690.39. Sewer fund totals $31,105.65. See trust and agency. Jess, am I missing trust and agency in my?
No, this month I consolidated the checking accounts so that TGs like health insurance or Teamsters, things that were paid out of trust and agency are being paid out of general. So you would just see transfers from general water and sewer to trust and agency on your abstracts for payroll.
Did miss the EMS billing abstracts.
That one did not get done, so that will need to be done. There was a delay in MedX delivering some of the final bills.
Okay, so we have meeting minutes from the 13th. We have the abstracts as read. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. So moved.
Second.
Do you need to pull any of the items from the consent agenda or any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Takes us to our first public comment period. I see no members of the public present in person or online, so we'll go right to item number 5, reports from representatives, and Ann Corman is with us online. If she can hear me, there she is. Take it away, Ann.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick updates. We have a new communications director. As you may have heard a little while ago, Dominic Recchio had left the county, is actually now working for the city of Ithaca. So our new communications director, her name is Monica Salvage. She just started last week. So you'll be probably hearing from her regarding meetings and things like that and other communications with the county. And as you know, we had ICE visit the county to pick up an individual. And I mean, I have a bunch of information if folks want it from the county's perspective of what happened, but I'll leave it to you guys. And those are the main things.
Questions, comments for Ann?
Was ICE only in Ithaca? And
Question, Ann, was to the best of your knowledge, was ICE only in Ithaca or was it elsewhere as well?
Do you mean in New York State?
for you mentioned that there was an ICE in this area, so I was wondering if it was only within Ithaca as far as Tompkins County.
Yes, only in Ithaca.
I do have a question since you mentioned New York State. Is both Suffolk County and I forgot the other county. Have they been deputized to work with ICE? I thought I saw some report about that. Do you know, or can you confirm that?
I don't know about that. And just to confirm, to make sure we're talking about the same thing, the question you had just asked, I believe you were asking, was ICE anywhere else within our county, right?
The first question, yes.
Right, okay. Yeah, I don't know about those counties. It is optional for law enforcement to participate with them. Generally, there's marshals, US Marshals that will that are federal officials, so they're already have the power to enforce whatever laws or whatever things they want to carry out. And so I am hearing that you can opt in type thing where some counties, some law enforcement agencies are opting in to help out. And so I don't know if they're deputized, but they can help out. Some municipalities are even offering to house the individuals rather than ICE taking them and putting them somewhere else. We passed a resolution in 2017, just to let you know, saying that within our legal parameters, the sheriff's department and the county employees are not going to assist ICE.
Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
Good questions for you. All right, thanks, Ann. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, Dolores, how are you? We've already gotten past our public comment period. Was there something you wanted to comment on, Dolores? If so, I'll go back to it. All right, item number 6 then on our agenda is reports from us. From myself, first and foremost, we need to have some budget meetings. So there was a doodle poll that went out, but
Oh, I didn't get
dates
that.
dates were a little sketchy, so let's just do this the old-fashioned way. I'm suggesting we'll keep our second February meeting. Use that for budget only. That's the 24th. Is everyone available Wednesday, March 5th?
Day before. Yes, I'm available.
I can be available. Yep.
It depends on the time. I have a dentist appointment. And you know, can't miss a dentist appointment.
What time works?
Anything after 4 is fine. I wasn't sure the time. I forgot what times were.
Normally we would do 7.
Okay, got it. Yep.
So we'll do, Jess, are you available Wednesday, March 5th and Monday, the 24th?
Monumentally available.
So that's 2. Is everyone available Wednesday, March 12th?
That one is harder for me. Could possibly get babysitter, but it would require that.
We have our regular meeting on the 10th. We can probably get some budget time slid in there. Depending on what else comes up. What about Thursday, the 13th?
Oh, that's good.
I can't do Thursday.
I can't do Thursday.
Tuesday, the 11th, back-to-back nights. Can't do that either.
I'm gonna say yes.
Wednesday, the 19th.
I'll be out of town. Maybe it's better to look at the 12th. And I'll figure something out.
Okay. Can everyone do the 12th?
Yes.
And then we'll have our second meeting on the 24th as kind of a backup. So that'll give us 5 if necessary. Actually 4.5 if we use our meeting on the 10th. Maybe the 5th. Sometimes we don't need the 4th. All right, Jess. So we've got February 24th, March 5th, March 10th, at least for part of it, March 12th, and March 24th.
Okay, and all for 7 p.m. on the special meetings?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And the only other thing I had was, the executive director of INHS, Kate De La Garza, who I think most of us know or have met, but has never come to a board meeting, has offered, if we're interested, I'd like her to come speak about progress at Crescent Way Village Grove, where things stand, what's rented, what's for sale, where construction stands, what their plans are. Is that something that we're interested in having her take the time to come speak to us? We'd like her to send out a very summary email on where things stand, give us an update. I thought it was a nice offer. I told her I asked you all, see what your preference is.
I think it's a nice offer. I think there's some public curiosity and that would probably, people could tune in and find out the information.
Agreed.
I would be interested to know, but you know.
So maybe our April meeting, we'll try to keep that March meeting open for budget. Okay.
Well, this organization.
All right, that's it for me. Marcia.
Don't have a whole lot to report other than we had 18 calls, but they had 2 structure fires and I'm sure everybody's aware that they were significant. The fire in Ovid, and then immediately after that, the next day, they had a home structure fire. And they said it was very difficult because the trucks and the equipment weren't even thawed out from the night before after the Ovid fire. So that made things really challenging, but they did a great job. And unfortunately, they had a very sad body recovery at the park. And I just want to remind everybody that these are volunteers and often put their own lives at risk and see some very sad and disturbing things. So I just want to send my appreciation and thoughts out to people that have to go to those calls and do those difficult things because they really do a remarkable job and they're not paid for it. So that's all I have.
Okay. EMS Youth Street Treat.
Start with the EMS call report. 18 town of Hector, or excuse me, Covert, 4 to Hector, 3 in the village of Interlaken, 5 to the city of Ithaca, 3 in the town of Ithaca, 1 in Lodi, 4 in Mecklenburg, 2 in the town of Ovid, 3 in the village of Ovid, 12 in the village of Trumansburg, and 17 in Ulysses, 17 total. I think it's worth noting quickly about those calls, especially the one on Seneca Road. I was meeting with DPW in that moment, and they were running back and forth as well to salt the areas where the water spilled. EMS was also on scene. So I very much want to reiterate that thanks to the volunteers and also I think to sort of village staff as a whole that really come out. You know, even when things are outside of the village, even when, you know, it really is, I think one of the beautiful things about sort of small municipal governance, small town, rural New York, right? Everyone bands together. It's a terrible time, obviously, for anyone involved, but it's also, I hope, inspiring to see the way that the community rallies around that. So I just want to note that. I also have for EMS, Joel has been working on, and I mentioned this before in terms of updating our replacement schedules for various smaller pieces of equipment. Some of that is just equipment that we have for no reason at this point, right? We just have laying around. So I want to move that we declare of no use to the village the following equipment. 1 auto pulse one video learn scope, which is by Interbright, one old narcotics safe, old air compressor, 100-gallon air compressor, 2 Panasonic laptops, a small printer. And that is it.
Removing it.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second,
What is to become of these items, or are they basically at the trash stage?
I mean, I think Joel hopes to maybe list them and sell them, but it will be marginal. Any kind of, that there isn't a huge amount of value remaining in any of them. I honestly think it's more a philosophical stance that he wants to try and list them more than anything practical or financial. But he'll try. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of money out of them.
The computers will be wiped of data.
That's actually a good note. Yes. Yes, we'll have to run.
It's gonna be
that,
my
but
next
who should
question.
you talk with about that, actually? Do we have anyone who does that now that we don't have dedicated?
HP.
Yeah, HBM, we'll put a ticket in for that.
Okay. I'll follow up with Joel just to double check that, but
Other comments or questions? In favor of declaring those items of no further use to the village, please say aye.
aye.
Oppose. Good.
So one more piece that is on that list is 1851, which is the older 12-year-old ambulance. We have put, and this is a round number, but I believe it's 12,000 or so, 10 to 12,000 into repairing it for the last 8 months. It's not even really been that long, and it honestly would be much shorter, except that it's spent so long at the shop. So you remember at our last or 2 meetings ago, we purchased a used ambulance that functionally replaced this one. The kind of hope from that was that we would have 3 functional ambulances once this one finally got out of the shop and returned to us. As soon as it got back and put in service, it broke down again. So at this point, Joel has fixed it. It is working. We could give it another go. But we now have 3 functioning ambulances. He is very tired of this one. It feels very, very risky, I think, from his perspective, to keep it on. And because we have a 3rd ambulance now, our replacement for 1852 is on order. In about a year, 14 months, we should have another ambulance coming in. So I think, honestly, to be perfectly frank, Joel has put an immense amount of time. Joel and Tony, just such an immense amount of time into repairing this that I think they're just done. They're just really, really done. So I think the question for this board, I would propose that we also declare that of no further use and auction it. But if we really want to keep it around, have 3 ambulances, we can. At this point, it's, I think, marginal value to the department unless we see it as sort of on-ramp into a 3 ambulance department, which to me feels premature, but I'd want to throw it out there as a question rather than a distinct motion. Just to get feedback.
I think we should auction it, get rid of it.
I want to pretend that we're not anywhere close to a 3 ambulance crew.
Well, keeping in mind, we also have the fly car, right? At this point, it is very much excess. We didn't move to 3 ambulances because we really needed to, although it's not that we don't have use for it, certainly, but the use is pretty minimal. It's pretty much, the edges of our surge capacity really where it would come into play if we have volunteers or staff who can, ride along in that moment.
So we were a 3 ambulance department for multiple days in the last.
That's true. The timing is tricky, right? So all of those calls, we had people on staff and we were covering calls during that time, right? So generally when the fire department is out at a call like that, we'll have an ambulance staged either on the scene or in this case, sort of just out.
I think there was one other.
Yeah, yep. And so that means we're covering our primary calls and secondary calls in that same time. So it really, maybe I was underselling it before, honestly, but sort of EMS capacity that I think Joel has built in terms of just a really well functioning department was on full display for those periods. And there were 3 calls going out. I mean, it happened a couple times during that period. So like I said, it's not that we don't have a use for it. It becomes a question of cost benefit, right? It's the maintenance of it for maybe 1 possible call, 2 possible. It really is. To me, it's a tough sell, but again, I want to pose it as a question more than a conclusion, just to get the feedback.
I feel like generally there's a really weird spot, we've talked this to death with EMS, especially on mutual aid, where we get punished for being good citizens. And I don't mind if we put some kind of back pressure into the system by not going above and beyond what we technically need. And seeing how far we can go with that. I know there's conversations at the county level to make that more realistic in some way, which I'm all in favor of, so. Not that it all comes down to this particular ambulance and whether we have it or not, but just philosophically, that's where
And I would say if we were way far away from getting that other ambulance, it would be a whole different situation,
Right.
but we're not.
That does help ease the
Right.
the sort of burden of proving that.
And I agree
One
with-
thing to note just about that point though is we are already going above and beyond. I just want to say it's a question of how far above and beyond. Just less, editorial, no.
That's
Yeah.
that's above and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That point is. Oh, if we don't intentionally operate at as robust a capacity as we could, then there's some self-limiting how much we're taking advantage of. Plus, if it's junk and we can get money for it. It's fairly. Yeah, I think that's.
Well, in that case, I will move that we declare 1851, which is a 2013 Chevy Express ambulance, of no further use to the village.
second.
Any other comments or questions? Joel have an expectation what he thinks we might possibly get for it at auction.
We didn't talk specifics, but maybe 10 grand in that realm. It is, I mean, it's 12 years old at this point. They don't see easy life, so it's not a huge amount. They've also scavenged basically all of the equipment out of it to outfit 1853, the new used ambulance. So it's not a huge amount, unfortunately, but I mean, you never know. The market for the used ambulances is so very strange. Unlike fire trucks, they get repurposed into like a camper or some kind of crazy conversion. So it's a little bit broader, which makes it just a little bit more of a crapshoot, honestly.
Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, all in favor of declaring 1851 no further use to the village, please say aye.
I
Opposed?
I also wanted to just quickly say thank you to Tim Mannheim, Kevin Whitaker, and Tony Whitaker, who, when 1851 immediately broke upon getting back into service, the 3 of them jumped in and just put hours into diagnosing the problem. I think at that point Joel was ready to just call it quits, and could not figure it out. And the 3 of them jumped on and figured it out themselves, and together very, very effective and professional repair. So, speaking of volunteers, thank you to our volunteers, particularly those 3 for jumping on it. Moving on to youth. Actually, I don't really have much to report for youth street trees. One thing I did want to note that I meant to mention in our last meeting is that we have been working on putting in fast chargers, EV electric vehicle fast charging infrastructure in the village for some time. It's been probably ongoing for 2 years now, at least. When the original grant went in, those grants were awarded, then rescinded and awarded. Now we are back in a place of like, who knows? But we did take the first step. We have new poles. NICEAG is installing sort of the back end infrastructure to make that possible. I believe they went in just before, right around the time of our last meeting. So about a month ago, there's a new pole at the farmer's market and a new pole across the street here. So 3 cheers for small steps, I guess, is all that amounts to. But just wanted to make a quick note that if you see those poles, that's what they're for.
Oh, I was wondering.
And that's it.
Okay. DPW water source, CPCR farmers market.
Yes, let's see, mostly on the DPW side today. One thing I did want to call out, while we've been very congratulatory and thankful for all of our departments. Not only was the DPW involved in icing and de-icing during some of these hauls, but they were given a bill or a quote for nearly $18,500 to repair a leak at well 4 down at Deganic, and they took a look at it and got more and more irate at the components of said quote. And eventually just decided, well, hell, we could probably go do it ourselves, and got down there last week before, dug it up, fixed the whole thing. Did it in less than a day with not even everybody on the job. So they've really come a huge way in their ability to just crank through all sorts of manner of different projects, which I deeply appreciate. So it was a very, very nice savings to the village, and just a feather in their cap for being able to manage a project like that.
Yay.
Yeah. The other thing related to DPW, also kind of related to selling off things. In the past, I don't know, 6 to 12 months, we have sold a Ford F-250 and a dump truck. And I would like to consider moving those funds back into the equipment reserves for the DPW, so that kind of continues to roll back into their vehicle replacement schedule as they sell things, goes back into the fund so they can use it back out. So I have not done this before. I'm assuming that the resolution is merely to transfer said dollars into reserves, but I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that.
Jess, I think it'll have to be a budget modification to increase that reserve line.
Okay.
Because it's a reserve and not just a regular. Okay. Do you want me to double check that with CPA, Kent Twain? Or do you already know that?
Wayne, I'm fairly sure it's a budget mod to increase that contribution line.
For reserves? Okay.
Budget.
But you would then approve do we just say that we can do that? Does that
Well, so
needs to be a resolution?
we can do it. We can do it as a budget modification in the current year's budget to increase that contribution into that reserve for that line by the amount of the sales. Or when we do the budget season, we could add more into next year's budget for that line.
I think I'd rather do it in this year's budget. They're gonna look at something potentially in the spring. I don't know. Well, I guess that wouldn't be for next budget anyhow. It still just makes it, I think, a little easier and cleaner to like keep them separated rather than remembering, oh, that's why it's been up and down different every year.
And also, we don't have general fund balance going in. Look.
Yeah. Yeah, so Jess, if you could look into what's the right incantation, and we can, there's not a rush on this. I'm just trying to get into the habit of making this our standard kind of practice as we go forward.
I'm like 95% sure you just have to have a board resolution to make that transfer to the reserve line. Do you want to pause though until next meeting, Roden, and get that in writing?
Double check it.
Okay.
What was the total amount for the two items?
Combined, it's 37,750.
Oh, good.
Yeah, mostly that's from the 29, and that's from the dump truck. That's really it for me. Otherwise, we've been just deep into working through budgets with Dusty and Clint, and starting in on our union contract negotiations, so. Those are the other pieces that are kind of newsworthy and ongoing. But yeah, that's it.
Please, Joanna.
Yep, I have. Our police report first, so we had 434 calls in January. One call for the town of Ulysses to assist Tompkins County Sheriff. And then included in those are 276 property checks. 2 alarms. Let's see. 4 motor vehicle crashes. 8 parking complaints, 39 traffic tickets. And there were several more. Let's see. And in talking with the chief this week, let's see. My notes keep getting pushed down. I had to do some regular maintenance on the charger. And there wasn't a lot going on here. I did want to speak to something that Anne said earlier about ICE, and just how that is handled here in the village of Trumansburg. So in speaking with the chief, we don't assist in any ICE warrants here in the village. And the village is really only concerned about making sure that laws are followed. And so for us, that's mainly, traffic stops and property checks, which they will continue to do. It does frustrate me and worry me, just being near Ithaca, them being a sanctuary city, being in Tompkins County, and just knowing that the county is, I guess, what they consider a sanctuary county. That ICE will be around more often. And to me, just being who I am, it does feel like it is discrimination against minorities. So I know people that are afraid in our village, including myself. And I do plan to bring it up as often as I can, just to have that present. Just because it's something that is a problem right now here. And hopefully just being scared doesn't, it doesn't seem like something that other people really talk about, but I do want to say that I, along with other people, are scared because of the changes in the US presidency. So that's all I will say right now about that. I do want to move on to something we talked about last month for parking on Union Street. I did pull out the entire section from local law that we currently have, and then just trying to understand, just because the wording on here is a little interesting, if it's still relevant and if we need any changes. So our current parking for Union Street, it's parking prohibitions. The parking of vehicles in any of the following locations is hereby prohibited: on the south side of Union Street from the southerly curb line of Cayuga Street to a point 115 feet northerly, from the northerly curb line of Main Street. That's what that says. Then there's another section.
Clear as mud.
Number 2 says on the westerly side of Union Street, and I can only gather that someone labeled one side south side and one side west side because it's at an angle. On the westerly side of Union Street between the most southerly corner of tax parcel 2.-5-6 and a 0.23 feet northerly therefrom. So that's what that says. So is that still valid? And how we would like to change parking? And if it's not, then what should it be changed to? The main point of just from the emailing back and forth is that it gets very narrow once before it gets to the conservatory. And that part should not have parking. I don't know where parcel 2.-5-6 is.
I think that's the phone company. Back alley drive. So I think that second part is the phone company side of Union.
So that side might be okay.
Thing.
Here that I sent, so I sent you all Tom's evaluation and report earlier today, I think.
Mhm.
2.-5-6.
Basically that. Rear driveway. To the intersection with.
Okay, so that's well before the Trumansburg Conservatory.
So that whole new sidewalk area should be. No parking.
So, okay, so that's part 2 of it. That part is fine then. So I think number 1 is where it might need to be shortened. The south side of Union Street from the southerly curb line of Cayuga Street to a point 115 feet northerly from the northerly curb line of Main Street.
So one more time.
On the south side of Union Street from the southerly curb line of Cayuga Street to a point 115 feet northerly from the northerly curb line of Main Street.
Feels like that's an extra clause.
That is basically from Union and Cayuga, basically from your driveway to. Used to be,
It's the old side, right?
it's basically where the old
sidewalk.
sidewalk, the old Napa.
Mhm.
So there effectively should not be any parking on Union after you make that turn. There used to be 1 or 2 spots.
That's right there, right by
They're
the,
still there, they're still painted there.
And then those should be
Yeah,
the only 2
and those should be
spots.
the only 2 spots and then no parking up to the
Because there
street.
was a back parking lot, so you wouldn't want to park along the road there. So you'd be obstructing the parking lot.
Who wants to guess whether what they mean is 115 feet from the intersection of Cube and Union or the intersection of Union and Main?
It's 150 feet from the intersection of Union.
230 feet between, might be just the middle, be the same thing.
No, it's more like 300 plus.
So I'm gonna voice real quickly, I don't mean to derail this puzzle solving, but an unpopular opinion, which is that it doesn't matter. I think we don't need to over legislate parking areas to a degree, right? Like we can live in a world where you pause to let another car go through. I don't think, to me, that's a natural traffic control device. I appreciate what Peter said. I think that was also my initial gut reaction, was just like, oh, this is hectic, like what's going on here, particularly while construction is going on. And I think he's right to point out that it is seasonal, right? That like locals may not have a difficulty with it because we'll become accustomed to it and all of that. And I think that's all very, very correct. But there is an aspect of this for me that's a high pedestrian use area. And it is a good area to have a natural control device of some kind that controls speed, where people exercise caution naturally because the road constricts. I navigate that area 2 to 3 to 4 times a day. It is right at the top of my driveway. Everywhere I go in the world by car, I go through that area. I do not see an issue. Certainly not a safety issue, right? It may be a slight inconvenience, but I think that slight inconvenience just turns into a traffic control device more than a dangerous situation. Which to me is the threshold for us legislating, is this dangerous or not? And I don't think it is. I think it's inconvenient and therefore helpful in the same way that a speed bump is.
I don't know. I
will
mean,
be wrong.
I've seen a lot of near misses in that area, and I don't think it's an area where people use self-regulation or self-control, because I see people flying up Union Street through Congress Street. There's no stop sign there, so they just make that turn.
Yeah.
And that turn is much more narrower now that you have a larger sidewalk.
When it's worth pointing out that the turn itself also doesn't have, posted no parking, right? So theoretically, if we're going by the posted rather than the law, you could park literally anywhere.
Right, so
Right?
that's where
I think
that's where I'm trying to get at, is to where, because we were discussing posting signs to make sure that this is correct so that we can post signs. And we're not contradicting ourselves with what is written versus what is on the street.
One other thing to note also is that I think as the conservatory is remodeling their front facade, the idea of putting gigantic no parking signs all along their lawn on the front is very off-putting to me. So if there's an alternative, again, I can certainly see a safety issue around the bend, right? If cars are parked there, then you're unsighted. You can't, it's not an inconvenience anymore. It becomes dangerous in my mind. I think you're absolutely right there. But if there's a way to do that is not signs in front of a historic building, I would love thoughts on that front, because that seems like a really sad way to report all of their efforts in terms of remodeling.
Is that area curbed? Like there's actual curbs
Uh-huh.
on both sides?
No. So the new
Just on one
sidewalk, sort of by the Napa parking lot area, that's a curb.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the curve up in front of the conservatory is also a curb.
Do we ever use paint like on curbs that say no parking?
No, but that's a thought. Yeah, like painted on the front of the curb.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
sorry, I have to take back what I said a minute ago, because I'm reading it now. So south side of Union Street from the southerly curb line of Cuba Street to a point 115 feet northerly. Should say, it should read northerly of the northerly curb line of Main Street. So from your driveway to 115 feet from the intersection of
Down.
Main and Union
Which I think is basically the back of the building.
Right,
is already no park.
Okay.
Yeah.
right.
So it's like
So
the
we-
old sidewalk line up. I don't know, back of the Napa.
Right, basically where the old parking lot.
Mhm.
Now with
Okay.
that sidewalk. I don't know how you post it. Posting. Because you see kept the parking lots, but sidewalk is.
We're just kind of in the middle of nowhere right now. The sidewalk just kind of floats in the middle of nothing and nothing. I mean, it's the road on one side and it's kind of used to be the parking lot on the other, but they haven't filled it in.
Are there specific curb cuts in and out of that parking area?
The sidewalk just ends.
Mm-hmm.
It ends, by the way, right at a telephone pole, which is hilarious to me, just as a side note.
So currently, the current local law says no parking from basically Duga Street to the back of the building. Ish.
Okay,
The westerly side of Union between the most southerly corner of tax parcel 2-5-6 and the 0.23 feet northerly therefrom, this paragraph shall not apply to handicap license plates, handicap. So southerly corner of the phone company building is the bank parking lot.
it's the bank part.
Mm-hmm.
23 feet is the handicap parking space.
And then the rest you can park on.
And everything on that side of Union Street to the conservatory is legal parking, which is why Chief had to put the temporary parking signs up.
Right.
Because he had the authority to do that for short periods of time. So
I think that's where the issue is then,
Right.
is
Is there, yeah,
beyond
the telephone company.
the bank's driveway.
Right. So from the back of the old phone company building up to Congress is allowable parking in our current law. And the question is, it shouldn't be, especially people coming around it or down Union.
Mhm.
Right.
We need to amend this.
Right.
I would propose that we switch them, allow parking on the southeast side, the southerly, easterly, and Carver side. Yeah, my side.
On the Carver side.
Because I don't need to see when I come out my driveway, let's be honest. I'll come back and complain about mirrors on the other side and stuff later, but I think it really is that inside corner that John was just talking about, where you can't see it all coming off of Congress and coming down. You're very much unsighted, especially if it's a truck or anything sizable.
Right.
I would absolutely agree with that.
I agree.
I'll just say philosophically, I'm definitely with you, Ben, on the idea that one way to control traffic is to have more near misses. That's what scares people, and that's why they slow down. And so there is a reality that it will feel unsafe. That's the point. That's how people slow down. I don't know that that means I'm opposed to anything you're saying. I think specifically on this particular intersection, because I'm staring down my computer because I'm looking at it. That corner is weird. It's like, it's not a nice little four-way intersection, right? So there's like reasons why, like, I think we should do something probably around that corner. But I think generally it is counterintuitive, but true that you actually want it to feel a little more unsafe because that's what slows people down. So,
And just narrow, right? Not necessarily unsafe, but
yeah,
narrow, a little bit confined, a little bit less like a freeway or a race course, a little bit more like a pedestrian, village street.
right.
I mean, I don't know if that's the appropriate risk either, because out of the conservatory, I mean, kids are walking out of that sometimes late at night. So is that,
Well,
Is
if you
that a
don't have
risk?
anything parked there, you're gonna have someone screaming around that corner, right? So if you have someone parked there, now they go, I can't see around that corner, maybe they slow down a little bit. I think like that's where the counterintuitive part of it is it seems like, oh, if we have lots of sight lines and big open roads, it'll be safer, except then people accelerate and drive quicker on it, right? This is why we had this conversation about maybe we draw some lines on, on Halsey to try and
Get
make it
better.
artificially feel like it's more narrow. Better than lines is actually having cars there, right? Because those really, people don't want to bang their car into a car, so they're going to slow down, they're going to give a little wide berth. It is kind of the way to actually create some restriction and reduce speeds. But again, I'm not, in this particular case, I'd be all for, whatever we want to find some amount of feet off of the corner here and kind of give a space around that corner for the corner to be a corner rather than a parking space.
so at this time, there is supposed to be no parking going up Union Street. On
On-
that side, towards Cayuga Street,
On the Napa side, yeah.
there's no parking.
Roughly the back of the building.
But because there's no parking signs, people have been parking,
Only since the sidewalks.
right? And people have been parking on the opposite side. So,
The nice thing about in front of the phone company though, is you can really get, because it was built for big trucks to go in, you can pull way over into park there. It's not like you're parking on the road, you park.
Well, that would still be open. We're only really talking about that back driveway.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Needs to be.
so the way that it's written right now, it's really about signage. How to make sure that people don't park in that area. And
Yeah, I mean, if we want
if
to,
people park there, then they have to give the right of way in whichever direction people are going. Yes. If it's kept the way that it's
Kept the way it
written,
is, that would be about signage on the Napa side. And nothing conservatories.
right?
I like your idea about painting the road.
Wait, but can we, I'm not sure I'm following this, because to my mind, we should switch that. You should be allowed to park on the Napa side and not on the conservatory
The way it's
side.
currently written.
And it's flipped in the way it's currently written,
Correct.
right? It's, okay. So I would
Right.
propose that we start by switching those things in law. So that you can park on the Napa side, but not on the conservatory
Conservatory
side.
side.
And I love the idea of painting. We could also put signs, no parking here to corner, sort of discreetly, so north of the north. Directions in our town are the worst. North of conservatory. Pointing south, right? So no parking here to corner, and then. At about the bank parking lot, no parking here to corner. So rather than no parking at, every 10
Back
back
driveway.
drive. Right, yes, thank you. And then, something along, I love that idea. And then the curb, that's a perfect solution, right? It minimizes the visual disturbance. While still, I think conveying. Issue, I don't know if that counts legally. Right?
If you have no parking here to corner, stripe it. You can ticket.
Well, I'd rather not stripe it. The striping doesn't really last. The striping, I think, is nice to get more spaces out of a given area. You know what I mean? It serves a function, but those guys can be out there striping every spring. The curb, I think, would hold up.
We could try it and see what happens.
I don't know if they can do it.
I think you could probably get away with. Maybe not just the one sign all the way down, right? Because that's a long stretch. If someone
That's true,
goes
yeah.
up here.
But
But
we
like,
could cheat it up.
if you had like one, and then maybe one halfway up. And then you come around. Right, maybe on the other side. Just in front of the conservatory, you get like one sign in there. I don't know, we could. Wouldn't be too bad. Visually.
Okay. Okay, so to change it to be in the other direction.
Yeah, we would have to reword some language and. We'd have to introduce it at a meeting, we'd have to schedule a public hearing,
Okay,
we'd have to vote to adopt a local law to amend this.
We have to now tell the. Group we're working with the Creative Village Code that we. Updated something.
Imagine that happens.
I mean, I think right now that it's winter time, we don't necessarily need temporary signage there. I don't think anybody's parking there. Just because of the winter. But lower down on the law, I did notice that it says that temporary parking by the chief can only be placed for 1 week at a time. And then temporary parking, we can implement temporary parking, but it's only 1 month at a time. So I think maybe next time we could.
Right, well, we have till April 1st, no one's supposed to be parking on village streets.
Is that all village streets or just Main Street?
That's a good question. It's at least Main Street.
It's at least Main Street. I see signs there. I don't think I've seen signs elsewhere. Doesn't mean that it's not true though.
Yeah. A lot in that ordinance.
Is it in that same
So
It would just- it would
document?
be
Since I have it up.
Where. Search for people.
this conversation, I think, is coming because construction that's happening, right? It's a lot of construction vehicles, trucks, and that kind of thing taking up that space. Generally speaking, absent those crews, the work crews that are there now, though that area is full to bursting anytime I walk up my driveway and can hear music from Main Street, the parking goes up both sides of that road. That is the only time that there's regularly parking there, is if there's something clearly happening. And I worry that if we cannot park there, I don't know why I use we, if people cannot park there during those periods where whatever music is happening, they will have no place to go. So you and I, we had talked with Conservatory at one point about a potential MOU or something to use some of their parking, which I know our DPW occasionally maintains sort of de facto basis anyway. But just to sort of put that out there, that this is, I think anytime we constrict our parking by any measure, even when it is small, it does have a real impact on businesses that rely on people getting, right? We are a car-based community that doesn't have good access for parking, which is a real catch-22 if you're a business owner on Main Street.
Yeah, and that's a concern too, if they do put some sort of entertainment like business that maybe has food or entertainment in that Napa building, you never know what's gonna go in there.
I mean, they'll probably have their own parking. I'd be less concerned.
Right,
about
out
Main
back,
Street
but still, if
businesses
it got, yeah, but still, if it got busy and the Main Street businesses were busy, that could create, that's a real.
So it's just, I don't know that there's any solution, but it.
Well, it's
Then
possible as we're
George or
thinking
whatever.
about changing the parking, it's not all the way to that driveway on the phone company side, it's. Maybe, 3 more spots up from there, you can park and then you can't park once you get closer to the corner, like there's ways we can continue to try and.
That's an interesting
Make as much space available without causing too much, visual issue. Sightline issue around that corner. So I think you're not wrong, and I think you think about Union's probably the most obvious, being it's right down there. But, we see how much use these parking lots get here on Elm Street.
Yeah.
I know in talking with Noah at one point, he was interested in. Doing some thought experiments of like what would it look like to have more on-street parking even on Elm, as you start thinking about these. Roads that come right off Main Street, those are the first places you're gonna start thinking about additional on-street parking, or can we kind of slowly edge into that.
I mean, it might be time to revisit. Some old conversations about. Making the pull off across from the farmer's market. Or kind of designated overflow parking, not even suggesting that we pave it, but. People who go to the farmer's market do like it park there. But to people who come into town to go to Atlas, well, it's really busy in the summer. Across the street to the farmer's market, across the street to the post office, keep going. Because we have the municipal lot, the laundromat. If the conservatory will allow us to designate some overflow parking there, that's great, but that's tucked away, so we'll have to have some signage somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's all kind of out of the way.
Yeah.
Pieces.
It's an interesting
What if it's-
conversation too with the old map of like what goes in there. If it's a daytime business, it's an office. Maybe someone is happy to let that be an overnight parking or after 6 sort of parking. Opportunity.
But as far as what we can control from the municipal side. That pull off across the farmer's market is not a small space.
No, well, it's quite a few cars.
Fair number of cars.
And we are planning on striping this parking lot too, and
That'll go a long way.
I think you can get all that whole middle row, make it much more clear and designated. So there's an opportunity there. So yeah, I think we're in a place where it's increment a little bit here, a little bit there, but I think especially when we think about Union, there's a lot to balance there. Okay. I would lean on, or probably a little more on the side of extra parking. If possible.
During the meeting, reminds about this language change in local law.
Sure, yes, I will.
Okay,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a question about the public hearing notion of that? Are we thinking like April after, are we thinking April for this and not the same day as the organizational meeting or?
We do after the budget.
yeah, we gotta get through budget season first, that's.
I know, right. So that's why I'm looking at April, and April 10th or the first April meeting is the organizational meeting. So then are we looking at, would you ever do this on a second monthly meeting? Or are we actually looking at May?
Maybe.
Why don't we write it first? And
Let's
then-
do,
and then we'll
yeah,
see-
let's do May.
See where the pieces fall.
May. Okay. Cool.
Anything else for police?
I think that was all for me. Sorry, one more thing.
Yeah.
We are having MRB look at the floor plan in the police department tomorrow to see what changes we can make based on our current structure. And that's it.
That's a 2. Got a 2.
I said that's, yeah, I think so.
Okay, clerk treasurer, Jessica.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier in the meeting when we talked about the abstract that the notion of the positive pay protection through Tompkins Trust for our checking accounts, which was approved to be used, has resulted in consolidating checking account use such that some of the trust and agency expenses for per employee health insurance, Teamsters dues, it's basically all that comes out of there, will now be coming out of the general fund. So there's one safe checking account that way. And similarly, then A&M fund will be a pass-through account for deposits, but it will not be a checking account to pay the billing service. That will come out of general. So if there's a way that you need me to highlight that, Gordon, when the abstracts come around for the first couple times, I'm happy to do that. And we got the budget session scheduled. That's fantastic. Yeah, we have also implemented in our offices an annual audit of the payroll database to make sure everyone's accrual benefit plans are accurate. It's just sort of a good end of year practice. Sometimes they change their software so that the process changes a little. So it's a good check-in. So that's 6 months into the year in January, checking for all of that. So there, and then the State of the Village postcards will go out on Friday to announce the meeting. I'm using the same format that was approved by this board last year with an updated change for the date. We'll also put out flyers. It will also be digitally broadcast in all of our regular places. I will start. You saw a thread, I hope, everybody, of just what agenda topics do you want to talk about in email to start there. And then I'll mock up a draft agenda on a SharePoint site, and people can put materials in there as well as we go, and whatever use it can be for you all. And then on just a side note on parking from an ETC perspective, I think you all hit so well that we need great parking. Also, the farmers market is municipal parking where people can go in general, not just the off pole, right? In front of those spaces in front, which are striped. And I don't know if we want to consider in budget season, do we want better wayfaring signs for our municipal parking areas, which could conceivably come out of an ETC line? So something for you to think about. That's it.
What do you, on the State of the Village postcards, what do we have for topics?
We don't. It says, what does it say? Like conversations, collaborations, and projects. And then what we had decided last year, Gordon, was to make the agenda public once it was solidified, to put it in the newsletter, to put it on a news post, and to have it available in the village office. There's also an opportunity. Oh, I can't believe I forgot this. Thank you all for your feedback on the formatting of the water bill to be an 8.5 by 11. I will show you a final draft, probably maybe Ben and Rorden, or anyone if you want. But once I really get it formulated with Williamson before we launched it. But there will be a space in that to announce the topics if you wanted to for the agenda.
Okay. Was that your hand raised, Dolores?
Yes, it looks like it.
Yes, what's the date of the State of the Village?
It's Saturday, March 1st, 9:00 a.m. at the fire hall.
Any questions for Jessica? Okay. Item number 7, old business, speaking of the state of the village. Any additional thoughts on topics, structure? I prefer less PowerPoint these days than more.
Yeah, that was my comment over email too, is I don't think we need to go deep into every department, kind of talking through and taking through its things. I would focus more on one of the key details people need to know if there's something really that stands out. You know, and thinking about, you know, DPW, water, sewer, I think honestly, I would probably just talk about water and sewer rates and just that we're kind of holding steady, which I know has been, it's just because there's been a lot of change recently to kind of highlight that, but other than that, I don't know that I'd go deep into anything. Maybe say something about CPZR, but I'd keep it pretty brief, so. Yeah, obviously open to other opinions on different departments, but I think we've done a better job of keeping it more on the like, what are the key takeaways people need to know rather than let's walk through all the numbers, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I liked the more open forum thing that we had last year where people could just ask questions that they really wanted to know about that.
It wasn't a lack of them.
No, it wasn't. Everybody seemed to have really good questions and so I think that
There was
worked
only
out really
one
well.
outburst. I watched.
Yeah. And the
But yeah,
topics
I
were
think-
varied that they brought up too, which
Right,
was
the
kind of
concern
nice.
is that it's like an empty, it's just a crickets, right? But I don't think we run into that, so I'm not too worried about feeling like we need to take up space.
Yeah, the only items I really want to touch on, kind of for sure, is an update on where things stand with Camp Barton. And then the 2 big projects, West Main sidewalk, fire in this building, and just an update on what those look like, timelines look like. In case of fire and EMS, what the cost might look like, better sense of that by then. But then, yeah, from there, I'll find town hall style, open-ended questions.
I do think it might be nice to have one slide, maybe just a collective slide for all of the departments, like here's the data, right? Like DPW had X number of water main breaks, did, you know, transported X number of gallons of water, you know what I mean? Just like high level sort of, right? I like the character of this meeting, right? Where we started by sort of saying these are the nice things to celebrate. And I think this is the good context for that, right? So I know with EMS, we're probably gonna break 1,000 calls.
Do we want the map?
Well, the map is a good
The
example
map
of
is a
like,
good
this is a
example
very
of-
The
insightful.
angry map?
Well, so the map is a good example of like, this isn't data for data's own sake. This is the story of what we did for the last year. I wouldn't use the map. I think that takes up maybe too much oxygen for EMS, but like if we just said, this is how many police calls in a year, this is how many, you know, emergency,
Fire
whatever,
calls.
like.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That
I'd
kind of-
almost go the other way. I feel like what I like about the map is that there's a narrative there, there's a story.
Sure,
there.
I mean,
It's-
that's true.
It's not just like a top line number. The top line numbers are helpful in like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're doing something meaningful with everyone's tax
Mm-hmm.
dollars. There's value in that. But I think the narrative is maybe.
I think you're right. I just shy away from it because I don't want it to, we've had a number of meetings that are like EMS. Right, or like you know, there were a couple DPW meetings that were like, hey, or you know, and it was just like, here's everything, and then everyone's like, all the questions are EMS, and all the things are whatever, or like the zoning meetings are like everything zoning.
Right.
I like the idea of sort of sharing that space so that it like, this is what the village did.
Right.
Like, this is where your tax dollars go, this is what your government does, this is the whole thing. Rather than zeroing, I mean, we can zero in on anything. I mean,
That map is
that's
pretty
fun too.
impressive though, when you put it up there. To give people a
I mean,
visual
we
of,
could do a hybrid map, right? We could do fire EMS. It's not, the mapping software is not hard, right? Any data set you can map, so. Try something like that, it could be fun.
I'm not opposed to a single slide for each department, just rip through them and. Here's a number of police calls. Here's a number of. Let's keep track of. Overtime hours for plowing, you know, something.
Again, I think so, because it's got its own budget line.
yeah, there you go. Water
Yeah.
main, things like that.
Would you ever want to have it be a slideshow? What do you know, like it's a loop, a slow moving loop? Or would you want it to be static?
Static.
Yeah.
I do love the idea of a slow fade just in the background. Sarah McLaughlin kind of. Anyway, that's just in my head. We don't need to.
With big puppy eyes.
I mean, if we want to go that direction, I don't mind working with Dusty to come up with, what are the top 5 numbers that are worth. Because it's a little bit different than calls, obviously, right? That's a little bit more
It's
strict.
harder to quantify for sure.
But you can do water main breaks, you can do, I mean, the big thing that they focused on this year was water valve replacements and how many they got through that, which is gonna seem like a small number compared to the calls, but getting through 8 or 10 of them or something was.
Well, but it's
meaningful.
hours, right?
Right.
Hours on water main break. I don't know if you have that data easily.
Yeah, I can
Like
ask,
overtime
I could
hours.
ask them hours on water main breaks and.
But does
Overtime
it
hours
make
are-
sense for DPW to do something like that? Because it's not, like, we don't have to have them all look exactly the same. If it makes sense for you to do, like, what are like the top 5 things that DPW did? Which they did very well, that makes more sense for you than it would for.
Yeah, I think they would probably argue that it's more about like the big projects that they completed. Re-roofing some of the well houses.
Well, the sidewalk repair, that was my favorite, that they started that. That's huge to me.
Yeah, they would happily put together a slide of like major initiatives completed this year, sort of a thing.
Yeah, that'd be
And then a
great.
foot
That would
that
be
was like, we
better.
also did the regular 3,000 hours of overtime, don't worry about it.
Right.
Less fun.
I think that makes sense for DPW.
Mhm.
And Roden, last year, did you do upcoming projects too? Because this is our sort of our one touch point with the community. Things that they might expect to come in the next season.
Yeah, I did. This year, I think the only thing I'm thinking about are sidewalk and then fire and EMS building. I mean, that's.
Well, in Barton.
In Barton.
That's Barton. You said
Those
that
are
at
the big
outset.
threes.
I think that's right.
I mean, those are pretty big.
And I think Darfler, the notion that, excuse me, there's a continuation of water valve replacements coming this summer as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Some EMS stats.
Sure. All right, yeah,
I'll get
Joel and I
fire
have
stats.
actually
Yep,
been-
I'll get fire stats.
Actually, I've mentioned this before, and then just a quick thing, sorry to keep doing this, introducing tangents, but Joel and I were talking at our last meeting about information to put together regular reports. I had mentioned to this board and gotten feedback that we would like to see mutual aid given to us. But if in the interim you think of other things that you would like to see, we're gonna start putting together reports that show the number of second calls we have, the number of third calls. And EMS or mutual aid given to us so that it balances, and then mutual aid by district. So we're trying to make a more digestible data set, but if anyone has any thoughts that they'd like to see, but yeah, I can put together a slide for this. It's fun.
Relevant waste stats.
Yep. I got it. Yeah, I mean, I have all of the stats that I just talk about. I mean, what I give is just a summary, like high number things, but it definitely gets into. There are definitely more details to that, so.
And calendar 24.
That's true. Yeah, we should standardize it somehow.
Calendar 2020. Back. Okay. Solar energy.
Yeah, so I think this should have probably said just general energy, a very brief update, which is to say there's not much of an update. I did have Terry review the solar contracts that we looked at last month. Got some good feedback from him. Forwarded that on to Guy for his review. I'm still waiting to hear back from that, so nothing more to move forward there. And though we have authorized now everyone to do all the right pricing on our behalf and so forth, I haven't heard any update on that front either, of actually getting the numbers going and getting them reviewed and sent back to us. So still just kind of in a holding pattern on energy on both fronts. I will say though that I think there was one other old business item that I noticed didn't actually make it on the agenda that we can add in, which is the village website vendor. So just to give an update there, we had decided to continue forward with our current village website vendor. He is actually we've been working with Finger Lakes Websites as our vendor. They in turn contract with another vendor called Red Pixel, which is a local web development shop. Finger Lakes FLX Websites has suggested we actually just work directly with Red Pixel, that kind of skip the middle person. They're actually looking to pivot towards a slightly different type of web work than what we do and what we would need. For us, this would mean same price, just sending it in a different direction and having a different support contact, but it's the people who are already doing all the work for us anyhow, just through a pass through with FLX Websites. I don't anticipate any problem, and if it was really bad, we could, I don't know, I have a personal relationship with FLX Websites guys, so I could at least give them a lot of grief for whatever that's worth. But I don't feel, I have no concerns with it. I think it seems like a very fine reasonable approach. We continue to get the service we need. They get to focus in a slightly different direction. So no action for us unless we have significant concerns and want to reopen the question of where do we get our website services from. But just wanted to run it by everybody here to make sure we're all on the same page. Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, no, they've already been involved in it. So I'll give them the thumbs up and then they'll start working on whatever it is for kind of next steps on rebuilding the website on the new platform and working probably just to collect any updates and changes we want to make along the way, make use of that.
Right. I'll need something from them. Because technically I think our agreement is with.
Yeah, so we'll need some sort of new contract. And we can get that signed and sorted. Yeah.
Okay, any other items of old business? New business, looks like the CCFA support resolutions from last month. The streetlights.
Yeah, so this is different streetlights than last conversation. Just to refresh everyone, last conversation was the control software is going out of business. What do we do? This conversation is, it seems like I suspect with the streetlight maintenance contract needs to be renewed. I don't know if it's a year or 2-year term. I'm not entirely sure. But they have let us know that the contract is up by the end of the month and that we need to renew. And so I've asked them for a new contract, and yet I do not have one. So we will revisit that as well, maybe at our second meeting. Got a small carve out to review that, but I don't expect anything to meaningfully change. I hope not, at least. Just carry forward on that one.
Okay. Any items of new business today? Second public comment period. Dolores, anything? video's a little glitchy, but I'll take that as a,
Oh, sorry. No comment really. No, but thank you for your service.
thanks.
Thank
Doris.
you.
I believe we have a need of an executive session to discuss some police personnel
And EMS.
and EMS personnel, so I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for those two items.
So moved.
A second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dolores.
Lauren, will you be able to just give me the notes on the actions that happen when you come back out? Because I don't think I can stay. Right? You have to end the meeting. Oh, you can? You can just stop live streaming? Okay.